Here we're building the engine on the old 300. I'm going to do a few tips. So this bolt back here on the exhaust, the back bolt on the exhaust, the welded nut often spins. You can see where it was spinning. Best way to get that off is to cut an access port right here, put a 17mm thin-walled socket on the back of it, and then just rip it off with an impact or two ratchets or whatever. But that's pretty much the only way to get to it. There's no way to get a wrench in there on it good enough. A while ago, I've rebuilt many of these 300s. I made a special wrench to get in there and get to it. It works sometimes it doesn't. It's really bent up all crazy, but so you can get back behind here. But yeah, that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is just cut a little hole there and that heat shield, and it's not really a big deal because this is already shielded from the exhaust heat anyways, so little hole ain't gonna hurt nothing. So that's one tip that always fights you a little bit. And these tins on top of it, this really long tin here, they tend to fight you a lot. So if you look at how this bolt looks after many years, this motor's never been opened up. See how all the corrosion on that is? So that means there's resistance all down this shaft. It goes all the way down here, threads in here. If you can get both of these tins out without breaking them on an old 300, you're a ninja. So one of the tricks is if you won't break loose immediately, you feel like you're gonna twist it, tap on it to kind of break it loose. And the other trick is heat it up. So if it threads in down here, so you get this real warm, aluminum will expand and loosen up a little bit. So I heat up the whole thing, tap on it, heat on it, and then impact it out. This one, as you can see, is almost all the way out. I just put some penetrating oil down in there. This one too. A lot of these bolts on these old 300s, for some reason, these little tins, they'll come out a little bit, like this much, and then they'll start to bind up. So what you do is you get them out where your film starts to bind up, spray some PB Blaster down the hole, let it do its work, and then you crank the bolt back in, let that PB Blaster get around the bolt, tap on it, and then work it out real slow. You see people with oil leaks up here all the time because they strip these bolts out. It's pretty rare to get one of these valve covers off without stripping at least one of the bolts. And generally, if one's screwed up, you put some good Ultra in there, you won't have any leaks. But these four right here are real important because they're all longer and they usually fight you. So the trick is to take your time on this and a lot of tapping and heating and impacting. But yeah, those are the tips I have for you so far. And if you forget, the 8mm go here and here and here, basically the ones that are in front and behind. Trying to figure out if your timing chain is good. So you notice that this timing chain is really tiny. The old 300s, the originals, and the big reds have a much beefier timing chain and cam gear. But to check if your timing chain is screwed or not, put the tensioner in after you pull it out, and you see how it's not going all the way back in? It's got a couple more ratchets where the chain's going to get loose. It tells you this timing chain has a little bit of life in it. It's pretty close to being wore out. By that I mean it'll probably go another 10 years. So I'm not going to mess with it. I do have a big red timing chain, gear, and cam that's going to go in this bike eventually. But I want to see what just the big bore kit difference is going to make. And next time I tear it down, I'll go ahead and do the cam and stuff. Because this cam's actually in pretty good shape and hardly any wear on the cam. And the timing chain's fine, so I'm not going to mess with pulling this cover off for no reason. Because I just recently had it off to do the gear reduction and the UBC Dirt Racer clutch kit and stuff. So we're going to wait on that, so that'll save us some time. Original jug. Piston actually still fits pretty tight. Didn't really have any piston slap going on. But it was definitely washed out from water and stuff getting in there. You can see that it was burning a little bit of oil. No real bad scratches or smokers, which is leading me to think that most of the smoking I had, it would randomly smoke. It's probably going to be valve seals. But, you know, got those in stock, so we'll knock all that out. Crankshaft looks good. Connecting rod, very decent. The engine's had water in it, but, you know, all looks pretty decent. So, pretty happy. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Feeling nice. Just a full disclosure, this rebuild is not going terribly well, and I will admit it because I'm honest with you guys. So the first thing that happened was both the exhaust studs snapped off, which I had happen on a couple 300s. Sometimes they're just really rusty. I could have messed with them more, but yeah, I was unable to get the studs out using the hammer on a 7mm heat and hammer method or vice grip method, so I had to drill out both the exhaust studs. Did a nice job of it. Gonna get some new studs tomorrow and tap them up. That'll be nice and solid. Additionally, another problem we had was this little guy right here stripped out, or it broke off in the hole, which is a really bad one to break off down in there because it's a dowel pin hole. So you got to get it perfectly straight, otherwise the bolt's never going to be able to go into it again. So drilled that bolt out, tapped it, found another right bolt. It's good to go. So everything has been, you know, salvageable, but it's one thing you got to think when you work on these old bikes, like a 2015, the head zips off of it, unless it's like, you know, not a Honda. But this bike's old, and a lot of the bolts have a lot of corrosion on them because this bike's been parked outside most of its life. And yeah, I mean the bolts look like this from being underwater and everything else. So yeah, it's gonna fight you a little bit. Always plan for that. And then once you do all this metal work, this thing has to be perfectly clean to put it back together. One little piece of metal getting caught in a ring, putting a scratch in the cylinder, call that a smoker. And you'll be pulling it back out, boring it, and all that work in. So once you get done with all this, clean the whole workbench, clean everything really well, and start assembling. But yeah, so a little bit extra work. Pull the valves out now and do the valve seals and everything like that. But nothing you can't fix without a good set of drill bits. And you got to have a good tap and die set. And by good, I mean I use a Harbor Freight tap and die set, and it works fine. But it's got to be complete and in decent shape. And if you ever break off a stud like this, Ace Hardware carries a bunch of different exhaust type studs that work really well. Try to find the right nuts. You won't want a little short nut. You don't want a nylock, obviously, that's going to melt. You want a long nut, and so you don't want those to vibrate off. But yep, one thing that's nice about this bike is there's plenty of meat to drill the hole a little bigger and put a bigger stud, which I'm planning on doing. There was a 8mm in there. I'm probably going to go to a 10 or something standard maybe. But yeah, that's really important to get those studs in there nice and straight and torqued down properly. If you want to be real paranoid, you can JB weld the studs in. But if it taps and the threads come out real good, don't need to worry about that. If you JB weld the stud in, you're never getting that thing out again. You'll be drilling it out again next time. So